and sue them for their money back because they shouldn't have sold it to him.
They didn't have
but he was like,
permission.
oh yeah, I'm going to sue him for lying to me. And he won. But he's like, the statue's staying where it is. I'm not taking it off. My mother's buried underneath there. I'm not doing this. Then his wife died in 1922, and 3 years later, he died at age 86, which, God, he went to war, he got wounded, and he lived to be 86 years old.
That's amazing.
Both were laid to rest at the feet of Aggie, which was what people started calling her. In the original sculpture, and the one that was named the Black Agnes, Grief was the original, and Black Agnes, they were very gender neutral, but people started to call her she because they named it Black Agnes, so that's where the she came from. But there was no really gender.
Right.
They could have been a boy or a girl. They didn't know. Or non-binary. Who knows?
They were non-binary.
So, it was said in the beginning. So when they died and they got buried, then the rumors really got big because people were like, "Oh, there's a bunch of dead people under it now." It is said that spirits of the dead arose from their graves and would gather around her at night, and the grass never grew in her shadow. There was no grass in front of it, and plants that were planted in her shadow did not grow.
Could be that they didn't get sunlight.
Science. We don't like to believe in science when it's haunted stuff, Margaret.
I know.
It is said that her eyes would glow red at night, and if you returned her gaze, you would go blind.
Ooh, that's not good.
This is awful. Pregnant women that passed through her shadow would suffer miscarriages, so pregnant women wouldn't go near her.
That's terrible.
Yeah. The statue was a symbol of terror in Baltimore, so poor Felix Agnes buys the statue he thinks is beautiful, and now he thinks it's great. It's supposed to memorialize his life, and everyone's terrified of it.
I kind of want that when I die.
I know, right?
I want everyone to be terrified. I think a ghost is going to come back from the dead and haunt them. That would be great.
Fraternities of the area started using her with their initiates, their pledges. Pledges were ordered to spend the night in her embrace. So the way her arms are, they were supposed to sit on her lap and lay there.
How uncomfortable.
They had to sit on her lap. One story is said that she came to life one night and crushed a freshman in her grasps. At midnight in the cemetery, a watchman heard screams in the darkness. He ran to Agnes's grave and found a young man lying dead at the bottom of the statue, and they said that he had died from fright, according to the legend.
I bet it was hazing that killed the kid.
Yeah, he probably drank too much.
He probably did, or they whacked him with a paddle. Or
they're like, "Oh, she came to life and scared him." Yeah, that's what happened.
It wasn't us beating him with a paddle and having him drink 4 quarts of vodka.
Right. Another tale is said that those who visited her grave lost their virginity within 24 hours. Can you imagine the number of 13 and 14-year-old boys that showed up in front of this?
Oh my God.
That's why there was no grass, Margaret. Because there were a bunch of teenagers in there.
Standing there waiting.
It's also said, like the one in Montpelier, that if you sit in her lap, you could die within 2 weeks. Well, they say 2 weeks. The one in Montpelier is 7 days. It just depends on, which statue you're in.
Which state, there's different
different rumors for each, or different legends for each state. In 1962,
law and all.
Yeah. 1962, a watchman discovered that one of her arms was cut off. It was found later in the trunk of a metal worker's truck. He said that the Black Aggie cut it off herself and handed it to him.
Okay.
The judge, however, was like, "You're full of shit. You're a metal worker."
Yeah, that's not...
cut it off.
That's
and
not
he went
a
to jail.
Coincidence at all. It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't... So, the story was all through the papers, obviously, because it was like, oh, the Black Aggies... Black Agnes was in the papers anyway, because she was, famous, right? Mm-hmm. So, when someone cut her arm off, that was a big deal. It was all over the place. Black Aggie's arm is missing, and then they find it, and the trial, everything was... So, this made her even more popular. People were like, I gotta see this Black Agnes. So, local tradition... So, more people were going to see her. But local tradition said that if you placed a coin in her hand, it would bring you luck. One of the articles I read, they did an interview with this guy. His name was Frank. And I don't know if that was his real name, but they put it in, quotes, Frank.
People called him Frank.
Yeah. This guy named Frank and his friends from New Jersey came up to see the Black Agnes.
Of course it's from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Frank from New Jersey.
And Frank said that he put a coin in her hand for good luck, but his friend Freddie, in quotations, put
They're Jersey Shore boys.
Yeah. Whatever their names were, I don't even know. I didn't watch that show. He decided to put a cigarette in her hand as a joke.
And she smoked it.
No, she did not. But Freddie was found. What is it? It was like 2 months later. Yeah. Freddie was found 2 months later in a dump in South Carolina. Very mafia-style killing, and no one ever discovered who killed him. So you don't
kind of creepy.
You don't F with the Black Aggie. You don't do jokes with her.
Yeah, but who else was he joking with? That from some.
It was the Black Agnes.
Oh yes,
Margaret. It's the curse.
The curse.
Although the cemetery is fairly remote, it became overwhelmed by people. People started vandalizing it. Teenagers would go there. Of course, they wanted to lose their virginity, so they showed up like in masses.
No grass.
Yeah. So it was being vandalized. They were constantly having to clean it. The family, it was a burden. It was a burden on the cemetery, having groups of people showing up all the time, all hours of the night. So the family, the Agnes family, decided to donate the statue to the Smithsonian to be on display. But due to the fact that she was unauthorized copy, they never really displayed her, and she kind of got stuck in a basement. Some say it was because they were afraid of the curse. Others say the Smithsonian was like, we're not being a part of a fraudulent art piece.
Oh, probably that for sure.
Yeah. But then they decided, it's still part of history. We should have something to do it. So right now, the statue is on display in the Federal Court Building Gardens in Washington, D.C. Which is kind of cool. So you can still see the Black Agnes. Now, the original spot where the Black Agnes was, the bench is still there that she sat upon, and the name is still on it, but the statue itself is not there anymore. They had to remove the statue. Grass now grows there. So that's something.
Yeah, the sun could shine through.
Margaret, it's because the Agnes wouldn't allow the grass to grow.
Science telling science.
The courthouse is just around the corner from the White House and only 500 feet away from the spot where the house stood, the Adams house stood, where Clover Adams killed herself. Right now it's the site of the Hay Adams Hotel, which is supposed to be haunted by her. So, it's kind of cool how all this came full circle. How the person who really started this whole thing, committing suicide, where she committed suicide, it's 500 feet away now. That's the other statue. The other one's still in the Washington Cemetery where she was buried. The other one is in 5 feet of her house. And then the third one is in Mount Pillier because they say that one, the person who made that one, Hubbard's, just was inspired by the other ones. Right. And apparently there's one in Chicago too, which I couldn't really find a lot of information on.
I want one on my grave when I die.
Yeah. A Black Aggie. Yeah.
So, in the same feel.
So because of the Black Agnes, the legend and the statue was down like Baltimore area, it made its way up to Vermont, and the legend continued with this statue.
I want a Grim Reaper statue on my grave.
I want any statue. I don't care what statue. I just want it to haunt people.
With a real blade.
With blood dripping on it all the time.
All the time.
Just drip, drip, drip.
All the time.
Yeah. So anyway, it's very interesting. The whole thing was cool. But there's also a legend. What? Are you excited?
Even better than a Grim Reaper, the Ghost of Christmas Past from Scrooged.
Yeah.
That one where you opened his cloak and he's got a skeleton with the little...
You want his cloak open the whole time. You want him flashing everyone. I want a flashing Ghost of Christmas Past.
Oh, we've had a few to drink today.
We might have had a few to drink. Some shots.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is this cool legend, and some people think that this is where the whole Black Agnes curse, folklore came from. So this is a European legend. This figure called the Black Anus, not Anus, Annis.
Anus.
Anus. Don't listen to her. It's
Anus.
Or she was also called Black Agnes. Agnes. In England, she was either called an anus or Agnes.
I would choose Agnes over Anus every time.
She's depicted as a blue-faced crone or witch. She has iron claws and a taste for humans, especially children. She was said to haunt the countryside of Lancashire, living in a cave in the Dane Hills. Along the tree line is the entrance. She goes out into the glen at night looking for unsuspecting children in lambs to eat. She tans their skins by hanging them in a tree before wearing them around her waist.
A skirt? It's like a different kind of grass skirt.
It's a children's skin skirt. She reaches into houses to snatch people, and it helps them keep kids in line.
She's friends with Gryla.
She has to be.
They're like distant cousins for sure.
She lives in a cave in the hills.
And
like, it's the same idea.
Likes to eat children.
Yeah.
Except Gryla just boiled them alive and ate them, and this person likes to skin them and wear them.
Yeah. So
Buffalo Bill style.
There is also a story in Scotland, too, that I don't have written down, but it was she was like a maiden or like a lady of a like castle, and like she held off a war, and her nickname was Black Agnes too. So there have been folklore in England, in Europe, based on a Black Agnes, and then it just happened that the statue was called Black Agnes. So who knows if there's any connection between them? But I saw that when I was looking, and I thought that was interesting about the Black Agnes and Anus.
A lot of times it was because they had black hair,
Yeah,
the black beard.
yeah. But the statue, it was the cloak that they're wearing,
black, yeah.
and then they're all cloaked. The one in Montpelier is not. It does not look exactly like the one. Did you see the pictures? The one, like, say the Black Agnes in Baltimore, which is very much like, almost exactly like the one that Clover had. They're sitting up, and there's a cloak over their heads, and they're draped in a cloak. The one I think I actually like better is the one in Montpelier, where the cloak is kind of falling off. They're looking like in despair, and I don't know why that one's creepier to me than the other ones.
Yeah, I think
but
so too.
So that's the story of the Black Agnes. All because someone mentioned to me about a trip that they didn't get to see it. So cool. I definitely think we should go. And she talked. I want to go see Emily's Bridge, which is a haunted bridge that some girl jumped off of and haunts it and like slices people up when they walk on it.
That's terrible.
She has pictures of herself. I'll share the picture she shared with me. She said I could of what she took of Emily's Bridge, just so you can see it. Because it's really cool.
Pictures of Black Agnes?
She didn't get to see it. Her husband didn't stop because she didn't notice the cemetery until they passed it. And she's like, I think that's where Black Agnes is. I'm like, what's Black Agnes? And that's where my whole deep dive started. It took a lot of thing though. Like there's only a certain information out there, and I really want to know about the Chicago one, and I couldn't really find a lot of information. So if you live in that area, let me know.
We go on a trip with our husbands, and they can talk video games and hang out while we go in
haunted places. Yes. Richard won't go to haunted places with me. He's like, I don't want any part of that.
I don't think Ruben's interested in that either.
But we can stay in the haunted bed and breakfast, and they can go stay in a hotel somewhere.
Or go to video.
Yeah, we don't care where you go.
We'll
go all the haunted places. Yeah. But I really would like to do that. And she'll have to ask her what the name of the bed and breakfast she stayed at. But she stays at different haunted ones.
Fun.
Yeah.
We could stay at Lizzie Borden's house as a bed and breakfast.
Oh, I want to go there.
I listened to the Morbid podcast on Lizzie Borden.
Yes, and they were in the house.
It was so
when
cool.
They did it.
Yeah. But the other podcast I like that's true crime is the last podcast on the left, and they did a deep dive as well, and it's so interesting how they both researched it and they kind of came to different conclusions.
Right.
Because last podcast they're totally convinced that she didn't do it, and there's proof, and they also said there's new evidence that just came out that can exonerate Lizzie Borden.
Crazy.
It's nuts.
And it's really crazy when they collected DNA and if they were able to preserve it at all, because they couldn't really do any tests back then. They didn't know how to do anything. But blood. Now you can. Yeah.
It's red.
Yeah. But now you can they can study that, and cold cases are being solved now because if they were able to preserve any kind of evidence at all.
Right.
But it doesn't always happen because, listening to true crime podcasts, the police departments are freaking idiots.
Hot Dog Squad.
They just
they call it Morbid. No, that was last pod. They referred to the
LAPD is the worst.
They refer to them as the Hot Dog Squad.
Seriously, the LAPD is I am sorry if you work for the LAPD, but my God, get your crap together.
They might be better now.
They could be now, but back in the 80s and
90s are terrible.
70s, they were picking things up in crime scenes, messing them up.
They were too busy. They were too busy drinking scotch in between cases and smoking cigarettes and grabbing girls' asses.
Yeah,
that's what they did,
were
basically.
Doing. So
and getting paid by the mob.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how we spun on this, but we did.
I
don't know what happened. But
we're talking about bed and breakfast.
Oh yeah.